Okay, so I'm running through the specimen paper, which was the paper that was done during the econs program time. Okay, so the first one is they ask, using a demand and supply diagram, show how the removal of fossil fuel subsidies. So last time there's a subsidy. So previously there was a subsidy, and now there's no subsidy, and how this will affect the use of fossil fuels. Okay, so you see in demand and supply questions sometimes, right, that they use vague words like this to sort of cover what they want. So you got to ask yourself this, right? Are they asking you for, in a demand and supply question, they can only ask you for a couple of things. So they can ask you for P, they can ask you for Q, or they can ask you for both P and Q, right? So this should be a Q thing. Yeah. So affect the use of fossil fuels means how much fossil fuels is used at the equilibrium quantity. So this is asking you for the equilibrium quantity. Yeah. Okay, so you want to make sure you label the vertical and horizontal axis correctly, because Cambridge always says that people don't label the axis. Yeah. You can use quantity, you can use price. Just make clear that this is the fossil fuels market. Okay, so originally with the subsidy, the equilibrium quantity is at Q, where demand equals to supply, so that's here. Initially, you are here. And then now when you remove the subsidy, the marginal cost of production will increase, right? So last time you had the subsidy, so maybe it will cost you $5 to produce, but then the government subsidizes it, so it only costs you $2 to produce. Now the subsidy is gone, so this is gone, so you're back up to $5 for the cost of production. Yeah, so use the word cost of production because that's a technical term. Okay, and then supply would fall from S to S prime, which is here. Yeah, so equilibrium quantity will fall to Q prime. Yeah, so here, so answer the question. This is how, so the use of fossil fuels will fall from Q to Q prime. Yeah, so make sure you also draw this particular diagram. Okay, so that's for A. Okay, next, they say use extract 7. So extract 7 is here. And the concept of opportunity cost. So this must be in, this is a question requirement. Explain the choice that's faced by producers in Singapore if the carbon tax is increased. So the carbon tax is increased, and the choice faced by a potential producer. So you can go ahead, once you see something like this, then you just jump straight into extract 7 and see what clues you can get with regard to the choice that is faced by producer. So this is the main thing that they say, basically that the required changes to fuel consumption patterns. It will change fuel consumption patterns, carbon emissions, energy efficiency. No sector or industry, big or small, will be immune. They don't really tell you any choices, right? So if they don't, then you have to come up with your own. Yeah. And opportunity cost questions tend to be like that. Okay, so what's the idea of opportunity cost? Just to run through very quickly, okay? In the next slide, I'll show you the answer. But basically, in the case of opportunity cost, there must be choices that consumers have or producers have to face. So there should be a hierarchy, right? So if the carbon tax is increased, I can do two things, right? Number one is I could continue polluting. But if I continue polluting, I will have to pay the increased carbon tax and pay tax, right? Or number two, I can choose to use cleaner methods of production and then not pay the tax. Pay the tax. So opportunity cost is the net benefit of the next best alternative foregone. So in order for you to forego something, you must choose something and then you forego something. That's why the word choice is here. Okay, so let's have a look at the answer. So opportunity cost is the net benefit of the next best alternative foregone where a choice is made. So you want to start by defining it first. Okay, so I mentioned we looked at extract 7 already. Okay, but the idea is there is a change in fuel consumption patterns. So if the carbon tax is increased, the cost of using more polluting types of fuel will increase. And then what is the choice? Firms will need to decide whether to pay the increased tax or switch to less polluting methods of production. So you got to make your choice. Make your choices clear, especially because they ask for it in the question requirement. Okay, so this is my choice. Here's the definition. This is my choice. Yeah. Okay, then you tell the person what's opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is the net benefit of the next best alternative that is foregone. So maybe so what's the choice that you make? In the previous example, in the previous slide, I showed you, I said, what if I assume that the producer choice is to continue polluting and pay the tax. Then what is the net benefit of the next best alternative foregone is that I could use cleaner methods and not pay the tax. So if I choose number one, I need to tell the examiner what the benefit of number two is. The benefit of number two is that I don't pay the tax. Yeah. So again, so I just want to show you what's the answer. So if producers choose to continue polluting and pay the tax, switching to less polluting methods of production is the next best alternative foregone. So the opportunity cost is the net benefit from switching to less polluting methods, which means that possibly firm could avoid paying the tax. Okay, I want to stress this. Okay, this is not a conventional question, so you have to work through the answer from first principles. Okay, there's nothing you can memorize here. It's not a conventional question, so you work through it based on first principles. What's the first principle? The first principle is this is the definition. Apply the definition. Use clues from the question because the question will guide you, and then just apply it. So what is the net benefit of the thing that you forgo? Yeah. So I really want to stress this. Find clues in question. We tried to find the extract wasn't very helpful. Yeah, so I'm trying to find clues in the question is one, and number two, apply first principles. So if this is the definition of opportunity cost, apply the definition to the particular context, you'll be fine. Okay, that's for part B. Okay, C says using the concept of cross elasticity of demand. So they're very explicit about what the econs concept is XED. Explain the relationship. Explain, don't just state. You gotta explain. This is 3 marks. The relationship between the price of cars, which is good A, and the demand for rail transport, which is good B. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is good to just define, because they ask you to use, and you look at the mark allocation is suspiciously high, so you want to just define what cross elasticity of demand is. Okay, just make sure I learned this definition by just sort of learning this word. Once you learn this word, actually you can construct the definition from understanding. So it measures the responsiveness of one good, which is maybe the demand for rail transport, and how it responds to the price of another good, right, which is the price of cars. Okay, so since cars and rail transport they serve the same function, they are means of transportation from one location to the other, they are substitutes, and substitutes have an XCD value of greater than 0. I need to explain the relationship between price and the demand for rail transport. So explain it, right? So when the price of cars increases, the quantity demanded of cars will fall, so people buy less cars, right? And people switch over to other forms of transportation, which is rail transport. So explain the relationship to me. If price increases, this happens, and that subsequently happens, which is a decrease in the demand for rail transport. So the demand for rail transport hence increases. So there's a positive relationship between the price of cars and the demand for rail transport. Incidentally, this is the XED definition. So XED is the percentage of change in the demand for good A, which is rail, over the change in price of cars. So if this bottom one is a positive number, right? Positive number here. The demand will increase, which is also a positive number here. Therefore, the XCD value has to be more than 0. Okay, so that's for part C. Okay, D. D says, again, they tell you what the concept you need to use is. So using the theory of, just erase this. So using the theory of comparative advantage, explain how Singapore's living standards might be affected by a greater reliance on domestic agricultural products rather than imported foodstuffs. Okay, let's run through what the theories. Okay, this is a 5-mark question, so you would expect that the thinking process is a lot longer. So if you use the theory of CA, the theory of CA says that you should specialize in the good with the lower op cost. Okay, let's think about Singapore. The good here is agriculture production. Okay, so by right, the theory of CA says that you should not specialize in the good, or should not even produce the good where you have a comparative disadvantage in producing, right? This obviously is a comparative disadvantage, or no comparative advantage, I think. Let's make it clearer. Okay, so no comparative advantage here. And then we can bring in the word, we can bring some explanations about factor endowments. So the theory of CA says that you should not specialize in the good where you do not have a comparative advantage in. Singapore very likely doesn't have a comparative advantage in agricultural production because of our factor endowments. Okay, then they ask you, let's say you don't have a comparative advantage in producing this, but you want to produce it, right? Greater reliance on domestic agriculture. You want to produce it. What will happen to living standards? If the theory of CA says that when you specialize, you increase as well because you get to consume more goods and services. If you don't want to specialize, then this doesn't happen. You have a decrease in as well instead. So the way we're going to answer the question is we're going to break it down into 2 parts, right? Let me just clear the markings. So I want to start with what the theory of CA is and how specializing in the good will increase SOL. And then say that Singapore doesn't have a CA, no CA in agriculture, and therefore if you continue to specialize in it, it will decrease SOL. So there are sort of 2 parts to my answer, right? I want to say, okay, here's what the TCA says you should do, okay? What you are recommending me is against the theory of CA, and so this is your outcome. Okay, here's the answer. So, standard of living, material, non-material. So then we start to explain what the theory of CA says. So the theory of CA says that comparative advantage is based on this thing called low opportunity cost. And low opportunity is determined by your factor endowment. Singapore's factor endowment is this, that we have restricted land space, we have relative capital abundance. So this means that we should produce more technologically advanced products instead of agricultural products. So you can see I'm sort of explaining 1 here, right? I'm telling you, okay, here's what the CA says, here's Singapore's factor endowment, here you go, here I should not specialize in this. Okay. So then you say, okay, if I follow the theory of CA, I should import my food. And if I do so, I increase material as well. So again, this is still number 1. Here's what the theory of CA recommends. But if I choose to specialize in agricultural production instead of importing this good that I don't have a comparative advantage in, then I will incur higher opportunity costs, because if I choose to divert my resources into the goods and services I don't have a comparative advantage in, I'll have lower levels of consumption. So hence my SOL will fall. So this will be number 2. Yeah. Okay. As much as I feel the answer is important, I think what's more important is I want you to learn the skill. So the skill is, these kinds of questions really require you to do your thinking step by step. So I start off by saying, here's what the theory of CA says, and what theory of CA says that if I do this, I have certain factor endowments, I specialize in the good that have a CA in, my SOL is increasing. Then you say, oh, this goes against it. And 2, say, if you specialize, if you don't have a comparative advantage, you have a disadvantage, then your SOL will decrease. So you go at it step by step. Okay? That's the thinking skill I want to get across.